It's been a while since we've touched on my personal rig, the one that I use for all of my video editing. These videos here that you're watching are all edited on this machine. I also game with this machine. I do tons of stuff with it, and without it, I'd be pretty lost. Specifications are pretty straightforward. I've been using a Ryzen 9 5950X for several months now, and I've got to tell you folks, it is a freaking beast. Not only is it excellent for content creation, video editing more specifically in my case, but also gaming. Intel's always kind of had an edge just because they've had stronger individual cores. The ring bus latency was always super low, but with Zen 3 unifying 8 cores to a single CCX, it is just so snappy. It is past Intel in a lot of gaming situations nowadays, and I really see no need in converting back to Team Blue for what I do. That may change at some point here soon, but for now, I've been sticking with this and I have no regrets. I have paired the CPU in this case with an X570 board from ASRock. I've got an RTX 3070 in here. I believe it's a 3070. Is that yep, 3070 from Gigabyte. I've just got 16 gigs of Corsair DOM plats. I should really be using at least 32 given what I do, but I really like the way that these DOM plats look. These are the old school silver heat shield DOM plats, and they just look fantastic. And for cooling, I've got a Z73? I think it's a Z73. Kraken AIO, which has the digital display here over the CPU block. Looks really nice. I've got a 4K 60 Pro Elgato capture card for a lot of the on-camera stuff that you guys see when I'm filming from behind the desk. And the power supply I've got in here, what is it? I don't even know. Oh, it's the Century 800 or 850 watt. This is an 80 plus gold unit, and I really like the Century power supply because it's very compact. This case is not very long, so I've got a bit of breathing room in there for extra cables. And I've got custom cables here that are actually pretty cheap. You can find these on Amazon for like 20 or 30 bucks. If you want to build this exact setup, I will have it linked below, and then underneath that, I'm gonna have all the new stuff that we upgrade in here. Starting first with the case. You guys read the title. I'm sure you're wondering, where the heck is the NZXT Flow? So let's get into it. Stay with me.
Fellas, if you're in need of proper grooming, get set up with Manscaped's Performance Package 4.0. You'll find their Lawnmower 4.0 included, which boasts a sleek, waterproof design, wireless charging, and advanced skin-safe technology for a smooth trim pretty much anywhere. And as nice compliments, you'll also get their Weed Whacker for ear and nose trimming, deodorant and toner for keeping fresh, and much more. Get 20% off plus free shipping at Manscaped with code Salazar at this link, which you can also find in the video description.
So here she is in all her glory. I went for the white model. This is kind of an awkward camera angle. I sit like this. I went for the white model because, well, my old rig was using a black case, so I figured let's change things up a bit. And if you're wondering what the heck the Flow designates in this H510 model, it's the fact that NZXT has finally prioritized excellent airflow. So the front panel is now largely perforated with the exception of the lower third or lower fourth here. It's got the NZXT logo just slightly baked in there. Looks really nice. And this is actually removable, so if you want to mount fans on the front side of this, piece of cake. These front panels also include a dust filter, very fine mesh, and if I can get this one out of here, it's just magnetic, so it's super easy to remove. I'm actually going to keep this removed for my personal rig because, well, I clean my system quite a bit. If you've been a fan of our PC-DC series, you know that I'm a clean freak. And yeah, if I clean every, few weeks or so, especially after, having so much dust float around in this office, I'm not too worried about dust buildup long term. So I prefer ideal airflow in this case. You see these large perforations are gonna be plenty for allowing air to pass through and cool off our components. Elsewhere though, this H510 remains relatively the same, and I'm okay with that. You still got the large cable bar for cable routing. You still got the basement with perforations up top. If you want to flip your power supply fan side up, you could do that here, but you've still got a dust filter down at the bottom. Pretty standard stuff, but yeah, nothing else is really different. So if you saw our original H510 review from it was a few years ago. Wow, time has flown by. I've got that linked below if you haven't, but much of those things are pretty much the same here. So I'm not gonna cover too much of that in this video. Those opinions are still how I feel about the case. And look, the only real issue I had with it to begin with was airflow. So the fact that they have only changed that is why I'm okay with it, because that was the only real gripe I had. The cable bar can be a bit frustrating to work with at times. There are a few other, small things I could nitpick. The fact you only get one USB 3.0 Type A port at the front of the case is kind of annoying, but I'm willing to work with those issues for the sake of having such a beautiful looking case. A lot of people are kind of polarized by this design. It's a bit too boxy for some people, but I quite like it. Okay, I guess there's one other thing I could complain about. The fact that you still only get a single top mounted fan. You can't mount two side by side, and the reason for that, a lot of people ask, is because of this cable bar. It does protrude quite a ways from the motherboard tray, and because of that, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to even fit a thin 120 mil fan up there. So that's why we're stuck with this. Actually, the AIO we're gonna use is a quite large 280 mil radiator. You can't fit 360s up front either because this area is closed off. So that's the only hardware stuff you're gonna struggle with in this build. If you're okay with that single fan up top, you still get your exhaust and you can still mount two up front. I think you'll be fine personally, because you've got so much more breathing room through that front perforated panel. Hi Pepsi, say hi to YouTube. Now a few other things I want to use from NZXT just to keep the theme in check. This beautiful N7 B550 motherboard. I'm going to pair this with the 5950X. You're probably thinking, Greg, why are you pairing such a powerful CPU with a B series motherboard? Well, for one, we still get overclocking support. For two, we don't have an annoying fan. Granted, a lot of those you can tweak now, the fan curves of. And three, it looks so freaking sexy. And to be honest, I was never much of a hardcore overclocker anyway, so I'm not really gonna miss out on any potential overclocking benefits associated with X570 boards. And some of those still are equal to their B450 or B550 counterparts. So not much of an argument there in my case. I just think that it looks really cool, and it still has features I'm looking for. It's got integrated Wi-Fi. It's still got obviously Type-C support. It's got plenty of USB headers. We're gonna need one of those for our Kraken for sure. And yeah, I mean, why not? And speaking of the Kraken, I've got a Z63 RGB AIO here. This has the digital screen that we were just talking about. I have the Z73 counterpart in my current rig, but this one is white, which I think is gonna look really cool when paired with our white B550 motherboard and our white case. So to kick things off, we're going to be removing this graphics card. I'm not sure if we're gonna be taking this one over into the new build. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know if the color is really gonna work there. Definitely taking the capture card. The only other things we'll need, definitely the 5950X, possibly the power supply, depending on power supply clearance in the 510, and then the storage drives. Those definitely we want to migrate over. We shouldn't have any driver software conflicts migrating these to the new build because we're still sticking with the same CPU. We're just changing chipsets. I'll be taking this. Thank you very much. Gimme, 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 gimme. And there we go. Empty case again. Let's put it in the box and then we'll get started with this thing. Hey again, Pepsi Girl. So this is everything going in the build, including new stuff here to the right. We've got the Z63, the H510 Flow, and a 3080 Ti Eagle variant from Gigabyte. This is gonna be a pretty sweet card. I have not personally used a 3080 Ti in a rig of mine ever, so it'll be cool to see how powerful this thing is. Of course, the N7 motherboard, my two 500 gig Samsung Evo drives that I usually run in RAID 0, although I think that volume is gonna be toast, seeing as though we're migrating it to a different motherboard. We will see. I have a 1000 watt P2 power supply that I'm gonna pair with some sexy cable mod custom sleeved white cables with beautiful silver. These are actually metal cable combs, look really nice. It'll blend with the theme nicely. I've got two 140 mil fans from Fractal. I'm actually gonna recycle these and use these in the Z63 just because I don't really care about the RGB. It's not really gonna be seen very well anyway through the mesh front panel. And yeah, the 5950X, the NVMe, that's my boot drive, and the Elgato capture card. So let's get to assembling the platform. Easy does it now. Gently slide her in and lower that retention arm. Boom, that's simple. Get this NVMe installed. It's got kind of an older thermal pad on it, but I don't have any replacements. It'll do for now. Ooh, and I almost forgot, I've got Corsair Dominator Platinums in white. These are so sexy, 8 gigs per DIMM, 32 gigs in total, 3200 megahertz frequency, and I believe 16, 18, 18, 36 timings. That is super tight considering the frequency here. You're gonna get some of the best dies as well in these DOM plats. Easy does it. We've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. There we go. AIO prep isn't too complicated, just need to remove these brackets. I'll take that. And torque down these standoffs. Love me some adult Lego. And it's time for the merge.
beautiful hardware combination here. This NZXT case and this NZXT motherboard. I'd expect no less. Now with the board tightened down, we can start focusing on front I/O wiring. Start with the small wires first. It makes it easier later on. By the way, wiring front panel is super easy in this case because NZXT integrates everything into one connector. We'll move the first of 2 included fans up top to make room for our AIO, and we'll get this gorgeous AIO installed. What a tight fit. This is really like right on the edge of clearance. I think we can get it to work. Oh yeah. And of course, I would expect NZXT products to work with their cases, assuming you're not obviously going for something that clearly isn't supported. A 360mm, like I said, won't work, but a 280 will, and that's almost just as good, if not better. From a cooling performance standpoint, they're very similar, at least in our testing, but using 2 140mm fans instead of 3 120mm means that we could theoretically get a lower operating acoustic profile with this, because the larger fans don't need to spin as fast to displace an equivalent amount of air. Hand tighten this AIO, and wow, it is looking so good already. I just, this isn't me. I think it's nothing that I'm doing. It's just this combination of hardware is so sweet. Let's peel off this plastic coating. Oh yeah, that is satisfaction, folks. Get these 2 SSDs installed. 2, there we go. And we can lock these in with 1 screw apiece. And we connect our SATA data cables here. Gonna load our beefy power supply in from the side here. This one's gonna be kind of sort of a tight fit, but we can actually keep our hard drive cage in here along with this longer power supply. There's a bit more room in this H510. Tighten things down and wire things up. And quick side note, check out how sexy this RTX 3080 Ti Eagle is from Gigabyte. Such a good looking card, very beefy. It's a tad bit scuffed up here on the plastic lining around the Eagle logo. I'm not sure if this was a used card when it was sent to me, but anyway, it looks freaking beautiful. I'm actually not sure if this behemoth is gonna fit in the 510. I guess we'll find out. So we'll get the capture card in here first, populate the lower full-length slot, and there's a train buzzing by outside. Sorry if you can hear that. Oh my gosh. Oh, it like almost, actually I think, let's see. Oh, this is super tight. Wow, maybe if I can angle it up a tad and then squeeze her back down. Oh yeah, look at that. That is as snug as it gets, folks. It looks like this card was made for this case. Check out that clearance, folks. We've got less than an inch. We're talking maybe 1.5 centimeters of clearance between the edge of the card and the front of the radiator. Connect supplemental PCIe power. Pretty easy. And last, we'll straighten things up here at the rear. Again, pretty straightforward. NZXT makes it quite easy with the 510, in my opinion. Let's get the right side panel on. Shouldn't be too difficult. Let's see, we can slot it in there. And then we just gotta tighten things down. It's a bit tight, but she'll fit, no problem. And here we are. Wow, this is a beautiful build. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. I just think that the combination of hardware worked out so well, better than I even anticipated. Yes, we have an NZXT motherboard, an NZXT case, and an NZXT AIO. So yeah, you'd expect those components to play well together, but everything else just worked out so nicely. These cable mod cables are the icing on the cake, I think. This graphics card, though it is a bit contrasting in color, still works because the interior of the 510 is black, despite having a white exterior. So the contrasting colors work well. We still got a black LCD when the computer's not on, and it just works. It really works. I'm blown away by how good this build looks. Now there are a few cons, things you should know going into this. I think that the 510 Flow, despite having a noticeable bump in airflow, which I'll show you here in a second, is a bit pricey, and NZXT cites the just increased cost on their side to produce and export these cases to the United States and elsewhere. So of course that cost has to be offloaded to the end user as well. To some extent, NZXT is not a charity. They're not just gonna eat that cost and hand these out basically for free with zero margin. So that's one of the things that's keeping this a bit costlier than I would have hoped. Granted, everything at this point is more or less going up in price, so I can't be too critical there. I think that for what you're getting with respect to other things out there, the Meshify 2 is a really good case. I'm trying to think of what else is out there. Fantex makes some really good mid towers in this kind of size and form factor. There's a lot to choose from. I think that the 510 won't let you down in really any department apart from maybe hardware support. So if you really are dead set on a 360mm AIO, you're not going to get that support in an H510. If you really want dual fan support up top, you're not going to get that in the H510. And if for some reason you want 2 or more USB Type A ports up front, you're not going to get that with the H510. So some cons to weigh, yes, but you should know that going into it. So I wouldn't really say that this would be all that much of a letdown. I mean, you should, again, do your research before you spend this kind of money on a chassis. But those things aside, and of course, taking price into consideration, I think that the 510 is still a worthy contender, especially now that we've got airflow prioritized finally. Thank you, NZXT, for finally doing the thing that we have been asking you to do for what seems like a freaking decade, okay? You get, the S340 was great, closed off front panel. S340 Elite was great, closed off front panel. H510 was great, closed off front panel. It was always your Achilles heel, and you've remedied that with a very simple solution that I think looks really good. Some would prefer the glass, yes, but I think when it comes to usability at the end of the day, the H510 Flow is the way to go. Dang. I should be paid for that. NZXT, guys, that's a good one right there, okay? H510 Flow, it's the way to go. That's marketable. I'm gonna collect my royalties at the end of the month. Thank you very much. Now, in terms of cooling potential with the left side panel on, of course, I wanted the AIO to stabilize, reach a thermal equilibrium before I started running the temperature test that you're seeing here. There is a noticeable improvement by including a mesh front panel over completely sealing it off, of course, though I'd say that this test isn't necessarily apples to apples with respect to the previous H510 because the new H510 Flow doesn't have those little side grills that the original 510 does. Obviously it doesn't need those anymore because the entire front panel for the most part is mesh. It is largely perforated, but I still think that it's something you'll notice, and that's a good thing. It would be a shame to have this finally reach the market and for it not to really have any impact at all on CPU temperatures. So the deltas definitely look good, and if you're into a positive pressure profile, I think you can definitely get that set up here if you have a front-mounted AIO. Those who are concerned about the way I positioned this, oh, you got barbs up top, that's horrible, just come on, okay? I've had to say this so many times, and I feel like I have to keep defending myself because people just don't understand what they're saying or what they're watching for that matter. Barbs up is fine so long as the pump is positioned below the barbs, okay? If you're hearing gurgling and things like that, it might be because your AIO is not totally filled up, and they're designed to have a bit of air in them so that the fluid can expand as it heats up. The water doesn't really expand that much in this kind of setting. It's still nice to have that breathing room, so you might hear some gurgle, but you're not gonna have air continuously flow downward with a weak Asetek pump over and over and over again, right? You might hear it initially, but after a while, once that loop stabilizes, the most you would hear in this configuration is a gargle, but you should not look at this as like, being severely detrimental to your pump. So I feel like I have to say that every time I mount an AIO like this now, after the whole thing on YouTube, the Gamers Nexus, great video, but I feel like a lot of people are taking it out of context, and it's kind of just, it's really starting to annoy content creators at this point. So enough to where a lot of us have made like rebuttals to that video, which I didn't really feel like was even needed because the video from GN covered all of this. But people watched that video and took things out of context, I feel like, and so I always have to clarify my position here. I don't think this is the ideal situation, but it is still nowhere near as bad as if I had taken the radiator and placed it down here over the basement, if I, assuming I could do that, and have the pump be the highest thing in the loop. That is bad. There's no way you're gonna convince me otherwise, but in this position here, it's perfectly fine, okay? And it looks really darn good. IMO in this setting. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm not really trying to convince you one way or the other as to whether or not you should buy the H510 Flow. I mean, if you're in the market for a high airflow case, you know what's available. You know what this thing competes directly with. Like I said, the Fractal cases and Fantex cases that come to mind that are in very similar price points. I mean, this is one of the better ones. I will say that in my experience,
especially with the airflow testing that we've done here. I don't have 5 or 6 different cases to compare with all at the same time because this is a totally different platform than what I usually use to test case temperatures. I can say that that front panel is not very hindering at all. One of the few ways you can actually test this, I'm just gonna pull this off here, is you can place your hand behind the mesh itself and then you can just blow through the mesh. You can feel a lot of that air reaching your hand if it's not very obstructive. Now there's some panels out there that are pretty bad at this. You don't feel much of that air at all compared to just blowing directly into your hand, right? Obviously this is ideal, but that's basically an open air test bench, and the point of a case is to kind of keep things enclosed and away from the elements. Now if you put the mesh dust filter in here as well, it actually doesn't hinder it too much more than just having your hand straight up behind the grill itself. So this is one of the quick tests you can do if maybe you're shopping in Micro Center and you're concerned about airflow. Just take the front panel off and just blow through it and see how much of that air you can feel on your hands. If you feel a lot of resistance, that front panel is probably no bueno. So NZXT, you did a good thing. You finally caught up with your competitors and created a case in the mid-tower segment that prioritizes airflow. And it really shows. Temperatures look great. And I'm excited moving forward to use this, my personal rig, just to walk into the office every morning and see this beautiful thing. It is, it really is a thing of beauty. I'm super impressed with the way all of these components gel together. And if you're interested in building something very similar to this, again, you can find my previous build down below, but also this build. Some of the components are shared, so you'll see the same link twice, but some of these aren't. So if you want to build something similar, again, with the graphics card being the one exception, because yeah, you guys know at this point, good luck. Yeah, you can find those in the description. I appreciate that. Thanks for watching this far into the video as well. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you have not already, and I will catch you in the next one. My name is Greg. Thanks for building with me.